Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host as always, Daniel Levy, your co-host Shaq. We're going to be talking UFC London, Darren the Gorilla Till versus Jorge Gamebred Masvidal. And Shaq, it's going down this Saturday, a welterweight clash in the main event.
This is a great fight. Darren Till coming off that disappointing title effort against Tyrone Woodley. And now he gets a chance to redeem himself on his home turf against one of the greats, Jorge Masvidal. You know, he's a fan favorite, and let's see what Till does.
Absolutely, very intrigued by that, and they stacked the card. Some of these fights could arguably be on a pay-per-view main card, and now it's on ESPN+, so I'm very excited to check that out. And a quick announcement, Half the Battle is now available on Spotify, so thank you so much to all our fans that made that possible. Something that I've personally wanted to be on for a very long time. I mean, it's the app that I listen to for all my music needs and my podcast needs for like the last decade. Now Half the Battle is officially on Spotify, so make sure you go on there and start following. And real quick, joining us on the show right now is UFC featherweight Chas the Scrapper Skelly. Chas, welcome back to Half the Battle.
Yo. What's up, guys?
Chilling, man. Good to have you back on. Well, boys, let's break down this whole card start to finish, because first up, in the featherweight division, we got Narimani. He's minus 155, and Mike Grundy, or as they like to say in the UK, Shaq, Mike Grundy. He's plus 135. Narimani's 12-2, and Mike Grundy is 11-1. So, man, both these guys are consummate winners. Both these guys are from the UK, but the one difference here is that Narimani actually moved to the United States because he wanted to address his wrestling. Well, interestingly enough, this guy Mike Grundy has been wrestling since he was 6 years old, placed bronze medal in the Commonwealth Games. So now I gotta know, man, since Narimani's been putting in that work in the USA with Team Alpha Male, you think his wrestling will be up to par with a lifelong wrestler?
This is a very good fight. Now, Grundy coming in for his UFC debut, I think he's pretty high level, man, to be going in there against a Narimani, who seems like he's one of the top prospects at featherweight. He had a fight scheduled with Barzola there, but Barzola pulled out. Now, Narimani, I think he's shown well-rounded skills in his two fights. Granted, they were against two bantamweights, Khalid Taha and Anderson Dos Santos. But he went out there and treated them accordingly, man. He's got a very well-rounded game, good footwork, that European-style footwork. He's got good takedowns, good takedown defense. Even though we haven't seen him stuff against the quality of wrestler of Mike Grundy, you know, I think overall game, I think Narimani has Grundy beat. I think Grundy's just a specialist. You know, he's coming out there to get those takedowns and seal off that top control time and win a decision. And he's going to beat a lot of guys with that strategy. I do think he's got a little size on Narimani. I completely understand why everyone's taking the shot on Grundy. I mean, look, he's got the clear path to win here. Go out here, get his legs, and get him down. Use your world-class wrestling. So I definitely understand why Grundy's a popular underdog, but I got to go with Narimani. I just think he's the more conditioned fighter. I think he's the better overall fighter, and I think that Grundy's going to use a lot of energy trying to take him down, and I think the next two rounds, Narimani's just going to outpace him and outwork him.
Chas, I know that wrestling is something that obviously you've been doing for a very long time. So when you see a guy like Mike Grundy, I got to know, man, because, listen, shout out to all our UK fans. I know we got a huge fan base in the UK, but the reality here is that UK wrestling is not on par with American wrestling. Do you think a couple years training at Alpha Male is enough to close that gap here for Narimani?
I don't know. You know, I mean, to be honest, we're fighting mixed martial arts. We're not wrestling. You look at guys like Mirsad Bektic, who, I mean, I fought him my first fight in UFC. It was his first fight in UFC as well. I didn't even train wrestling that camp hardly at all. I just thought I was going to go bullet. Like, I didn't think he stood a chance with me in the takedown game. I wanted to knock him out. I worked mostly my boxing, and it was a big mistake for me. So when you talk about these guys, it's not a wrestling match. I mean, it's mixed martial arts, and it's a completely different style of wrestling. You got the cage, which, takes away a lot of the hips, and there are a lot of ways that you can manipulate yourself to defend takedowns against the cage and also to get takedowns against the cage. I think that Narimani, I'm going to call him Nad. I like Nad better. I think that Nad does a really good job wrestling for mixed martial arts. He really does. I mean, his takedowns are good. From what I've seen, when I watch tape of him, I say, this guy does have good does have good takedowns. He is very well rounded. I did place a bet on Grundy. When I first watched the video, I just thought that Grundy had very smooth entries. He had powerful takedowns. What I like about Grundy is that he's not just a wrestler. He also has good grappling. I mean, he's good. He has a good top game, and I think he's going to be on top. Now, I don't know how Nad's bottom game is per se. I mean, I know he's got pretty good get ups. He's going to give his back though to get up, which, Grundy isn't like me. I mean, he's not going to throw his hooks in and try and rear naked choke. He's going to try and grind that out and, control the wrists and bring him back to the mat that way, which, I mean, you talk about someone getting worn down. If Grundy does get him down early and Nad gives his back and tries to stand up against the cage, and Grundy keeps dragging him down and dragging him down and dragging him down, I mean, he's going to be just as exhausted as Grundy. So that's going to be a war there, like a war of attrition. And, in my opinion, I just think Grundy has the better grappling of the two. And I've seen some pretty slick Dar setups from him where he steps back over. He takes the arm with him and steps back over, and I really like that. I could see him hitting that. And I could see him actually getting submission in this fight. Now, I was pretty when I first watched the film, I was confident because I thought that Nad's striking is very predictable. He boxes and he loves left hooks, man. I don't know what it is about him throwing. He's stuck on that left hook, and when you get predictable like that, it does make the entries on your legs a lot easier. And Grundy is one of those guys that he can take you down in the open. He's not going to be necessarily looking to push it to the cage and take him down. He's very explosive with his finishes. He's strong. He'll lift you up and he can finish you. I think if Nad gets predictable with his boxing, it's going to make the entries pretty easy for Grundy. And if he doesn't push him against the cage and he takes him down out in the open, I don't think he's going to be wasting a lot of energy there on the takedowns like you think. So I did go Grundy. I did bet on him. But I will say, I've obsessed over the film on this fight. And I'm not super confident, man. Like, Nad's tough. He's tough. He's well-rounded. He's a very well-rounded fighter. And if he's improved a lot out of alpha male, he could make it a long night for Grundy. I'm just hoping Grundy gets in there out in the open and not against the cage, lifts him, takes him down, grinds him out on top, and gets I'm looking at a Darce finish for him.
So Chas Skelly's going with Grundy via Darce choke. So for me, it's interesting because Narimani, what he's shown me, not just in the UFC, but on the Cage Warriors regional scene, he was the Cage Warriors champion. The guy's pretty damn well-rounded. And obviously, you guys go back to that fight against Enlund back in 2014. And I guess that was the one time that, I don't want to say his wrestling got exposed, but he was taken down a few times. He addressed that. He moved to the States, to alpha male. Now he's working with D1 wrestlers. Now I know a lot of people are going to sit here and act like, oh, but alpha male is on this big skid. Yeah, well, let's talk about that for a second. I mean, well, Feely did just win, but let's talk about that for a sec. Okay, Chad Mendes, the dude was on retirement's doorstep. Of course he's done. Cody Garbrandt, the way he fights, of course he's done. But with a guy like Narimani, look, what you got to understand is Cody Garbrandt and Chad Mendes, they were already D1 wrestlers, so it's not like they have all this area, all this ground to cover, whereas a guy like Narimani moving to the States, working with guys like Chad Mendes every day, Nad's not a D1 wrestler. That's going to help Nad's MMA wrestling just get that much better. So now the question is, has he leveled up to the point where he can go out there against Mike Grundy and stuff those takedowns and make this a mixed martial arts fight? Like Chaz was referring to earlier, that this is not a wrestling match, this is a MMA match. So that's what's interesting to me. Now, I think that if you played Grundy, around the plus 160 to even plus 225, if you played him around that range, you got a good value. And now, if you want to guarantee yourself a profit, you can even come back on the other side and bet Narimani because the line has dropped so much that is an option for you. But that being said, this UK wrestling, I need to see it firsthand inside the octagon before I'm willing to jump on the train. I'm not counting him out at all. I'm just going to sit back and see firsthand if he's the real deal or not. So I'm going to go with Narimani just because he's proven more to me at this point. But I have an open mind, and I can't wait to see what happens.
I'm actually, you having said that, I'm actually considering if the line drops anymore, I am thinking about, hedging my bet with Narimani, to be honest with you. Just because if I didn't even know that he was out at Alpha Male initially. I saw one of my good friends and my old roommate, Alex Munoz, is he helps coach. He's a wrestling out at Alpha Male, and he's out there cornering Narimani. I didn't even know. I didn't know that. I didn't know he was at Alpha Male. And got me thinking. I'm like, if this guy did improve his wrestling and he can stop some of those takedowns, I mean, it's gonna be a long night for Grundy. Doesn't. I wish he would open up more to open those takedowns up, but he just doesn't really. I just don't see him winning the striking battle at all if it does stay standing.
I mean, yeah, betting on Grundy, it's contingent on him getting these takedowns. But when you got the kind of dog odds that you got, or even better, I can completely understand. But now that it's dropped, now that so much action has come in, I mean, listen, I'm not the biggest advocate of hedging, but this is a good spot to guarantee yourself a profit. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I'm not a big advocate of hedging either, but I am a big advocate of guaranteed money. And
yes, sir.
And if it drops any more, I'm going to do it. So
hell yeah. Well, next up in the flyweight division, we got Molly the Can McCann. She's 7-2, and Priscilla Cachoeira is 8-1. And currently, they got Molly McCann. She's -200. The comeback on Priscilla Cachoeira is +170. Well, Shaq, I know Molly the Can McCann didn't have the best first impression in her UFC debut, but now she's -200 against Priscilla Cachoeira. Do you think she's simply going to be the more technical fighter than Cachoeira, or do you think that it's going to be 2 straight L's here, man?
Man, this is a tough fight to call because, I'm really not impressed with either lady, Meatball Molly. I mean, she did fight a ground specialist in her UFC debut, but Priscilla Cachoeira fought the UFC flyweight champion in her UFC debut. She was undefeated prior to that. I know her style is hideous. I mean, she just throws these big, loopy punches. The thing is, they have a lot of power on them, and for the female division, that is kind of important. Molly McCann also has a reputation as a boxer. Her ground game is definitely very suspect. So, I mean, she's going to stand there with Cachoeira, so there's a good chance Cachoeira gets her fight. But I kind of have to just slightly lean McCann just because I can see the straight punches landing all day. But this could be that typical close female fight, man. You can't really trust either side, in my opinion, but it's a dog or pass from the betting perspective. At the end of the day, this girl has 2 losses to Jillian and somebody else, and she only lost to Valentina. So, but I slightly lean McCann.
Chaz, man, you going with Priscilla Cachoeira or Molly McCann?
Molly's nickname is Meatball, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. It's a long-time joke between me and the fans at Half the Battle.
I'm not betting against anybody named Meatball. Ever. Ever. But no, I mean, honestly, I think Shaq said it pretty well. Sometimes, and I'm not down on anybody, but sometimes in these women's fights, when the odds are like this on 2 fairly unproven women, it is so hard to bet those. And I just don't trust it either way. It has to be a dog or pass for me. Priscilla I didn't think she looked good against Valentina. I mean, yeah, Shevchenko. I just didn't think she looked good. But I didn't think, obviously Meatball didn't look good either in her last fight. It's going to be a completely different fight. It's going to be a stand-up battle, right? And yeah, I hope Meatball wins because I like her nickname. But as far as the fight's concerned, I did watch each of their. I did watch their. I actually watched all Meatball fights before for her last fight, but I just can't trust her. It's a no bet for me, but I hope she wins. I like her nickname, and I think she's got a good personality. I like her. I think she's funny. So, whatever.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with both of you. I'm going to go with Molly the Can McCann as well. I think that in this spot specifically with Priscilla Cachoeira, she does come out and she does throw those bombs. And with other people in that division, it's actually going to kind of punk them out because they're not used to girls swinging that hard. But in this specific spot, even though we've talked a little shit in the past, the fighter that was able to expose Molly McCann was actually a grappler, and Priscilla Cachoeira is a Brazilian brawler. So I actually think that Molly can win this fight by being the smarter fighter in here and actually going out there and putting on a bit of a Euro point fighting type of performance here. Possibly even getting a finish along the way. So I'm going to go with Molly McCann here for the victory. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got Dan Ige. He's 10-2. And Danny Henry, he's 12-2. And currently they got Dan Ige -145. The comeback on Danny Henry is +125. Chaz, I'm going to let you go first, man. This is your weight class. Both these guys are really tough. Who you got?
Man, this is another one of those fights that I really like watched the film, and I was like, when I looked at it initially, I was like, Ige, I think with his take, because he does have good takedowns and he's got good top control. I absolutely hate the fact about him, though, that he cannot stick the back. Like he should have had Jordan Griffin out. I mean, I'm not going to say out of there because the guy's tough and he's squirmy and he wormed his way out several times. But, I feel like Ige should have really just dominated that fight. And with the takedowns and the positions he had him in, he had him in, dominant control positions and just never capitalized. So, man, I wanted to bet Ige so bad. I was, but then when I also go back and watch his fight against Julio, how do you say his last name? Arce? Is it Arce?
Arce.
Arce. When I go back and watch that fight, I'm like, man, if somebody comes to Ige aggressive and just puts it out there with length and range, he has a really hard time with the striking if he can't get the takedowns. Now, can Henry stop the takedowns? I mean, I don't know, but I do know that he's an aggressive striker, and he's got a chin on him, man. Like I saw him walk straight forward and just get tagged over and over and over and just keep coming forward and never stop and win a really gritty decision. And I really like that about that guy. And so this was another no bet for me. I just can't pull the trigger like I wanted to. I want to go Ige, and I'm actually going to say I think that Ige gets the takedowns. I think that he wins enough control in the rounds. I think he controls the rounds enough to where he can squeak out a decision here. But man, if Henry comes out like a man on fire and stuffs a couple takedowns and really puts it on him striking wise, like I think that he can, like his length. Unfortunately, it seems like he kind of crowds it. He walks forward a little too much and crowds his punches with as long as he is. But he also does like to throw knees on the in between, which I think could be very beneficial for him, considering that Ige wants to get it to the ground. I'm gonna go Ige and say he's gonna squeak out a decision here, but I would not be surprised if Henry hurt him on the feet and got the win.
So the pick is Ige for Chas the Scrapper Skelly. Well, Shaq, listen, man. Obviously, both of these guys have been pretty damn impressive. Ige is a very dominant grappler, and Danny Henry seems like one of those guys. He'll take that ass whooping up front. You start to slow down on him, he will tee off on you. We know Ige has had somewhat of a cardio issue in the past. That third round against Jordan Griffin, he was able to grind it out and get the win. So now I got to know, man, who you got in this featherweight matchup.
It's a very good matchup, man. Firstly, I think both guys are definitely, I wouldn't say low level, but I would definitely say definitely in the developing stages of the 144 division. I think that Ige, he's a college wrestler. He can definitely get takedowns. We saw that in the Santiago fight. We saw that it's Jordan Griffin. What's the common thing at Roufusport? Those guys are always stuffing takedowns, man. They're not known for their takedown defense. So, I wasn't that surprised. I mean, going into that fight, we knew Jordan Griffin had some very suspect takedown defense. Now, with Danny Henry, on the other hand, Danny Henry's not really that impressive. I think the most impressive thing about Henry is his mental, his heart. I think he's one of these guys that can capitalize on Ige's weakness. Ige's a guy that his weakness is that he's going to use a lot of energy grappling. When they get back up to the feet, he's going to be in big trouble when someone is able to stuff the takedowns and make him work. So I think Henry's going to do exactly that. I think Henry's going to get taken down a little bit early, but I think he's one of those guys that's just nonstop. I think that even on bottom, he's going to be making them work. He's going to either get a stand-up or scramble back up to their feet and take over in the late rounds. To take out a guy like Hakeem Dawodu, even though Hakeem Dawodu's not the best guy, but he's a super hyped prospect, and we saw how he looked against Bochniak. To take him out in less than, 30 seconds is very impressive. And I think Henry gets a job done. I think he struggles a little bit early, but I think he gets to Ige late after Ige uses a lot of energy with the takedowns.
Man, you do bring up some great points because obviously that cardio of Ige, you weather that little jiu-jitsu storm. I say little jiu-jitsu storm. It's a serious jiu-jitsu storm. You weather that, you can get him in that gassed out state. It's just when you do have him there, You can't just tee off on him and then give up a takedown because he'll steal the round after that. You know what I mean? You gotta tee off on this guy to the point where you do put him down, and there is no question that you are the better man. Because if this is a back and forth fight, I really think that the takedowns of Dan Ige is what's going to seal off those rounds. And obviously, once it hits the mat, he's great at passing. He's great at scrambling to the back. So Dan Ige's grappling game is on point. You know, he's also got things going on outside the cage. He's also a manager. So Dan Ige is a very smart guy. With Danny Henry, obviously I love his resilience. I love the kind of heart this guy brings to the table. He's one of those dudes that I feel like he's going to have to get a couple more wins to gain a lot of people's respect, because even in that fight with Tamor, he was getting teed off on for about 7 minutes. Then he came back against the gas fighter. And then the last one against Hakeem, unbelievable performance, but it was under 30 seconds. So I feel like we really don't know much about him yet, except that he's a tall man for the weight class, and he's very, very tough. So, but Ige's Hawaiian. He's tough too. I'm gonna go with Ige here, but I do believe it's a dog or pass situation.
Yeah, I think another thing that I was going to say about that is cardio issue. I mean, you look at somebody like Griffin. That guy's a worm, man, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying that in a way that, like, he was forcing the scrambles and he was in bad positions and forcing the scrambles. And even though Ige was on top, he was making him work and he kept getting out and scrambling up. That's an exhausting style fight. I mean, shit, that is 15 minutes of just going. And so I don't think Ige's cardio is as bad as you might think. And if Henry doesn't force those scrambles on the ground to where he's really making him work, if he lets him settle into positions, he's not going to gas him out like that.
It's a good point. Yeah. So next up in the middleweight division, we got Tom Breese. He's 11-1, and Ian Heinisch is 12-1. And currently, they got Tom Breese minus 140. The comeback on Ian Heinisch is plus 120. Well, Shaq, we've only seen Tom Breese one time in the last 3 years, and it was against the now retired Dan Kelly. And with Ian Heinisch, I mean, talk about a guy that's changed his life around. I mean, from being a drug kingpin in Spain to now he's one of the top middleweight prospects in the world.
Yeah, it's a very good fight. Tom Breese moving up to 185. I definitely think that's the best decision for him moving long term. And I think Tom Breese is a good fighter. You know, he's got good boxing. He's got good jiu-jitsu with his leg locks. I think, like I said, 185 is definitely going to be good moving forward. But I just think he's untested against. He's yet to beat a proven guy. You know, when he fought Sean Strickland at 170, he lost that fight. He lost the last 2 rounds. No shame in losing to Strickland. It was a good fight. But other than that, we've only seen him against like you said, Kelly, Nakamura,
Luis
Dutra, and
Cathal
Pendred. So his level of competition is a little suspect in my opinion. And then we got Heinisch, who lost his LFA title to Marcus Perez, then won it back, got his call on Contender Series, and then took out arguably a top 25 guy in Cesar. I mean, we're talking about a guy with wins over Smith, Marquardt, Hermanson, Maheda, Roberson, Serginho. I mean, Cesar's beating a lot of guys, and to go out there in 30, 27, 29, 28 on 2 cards was very impressive, man. He broke Cesar Mutanchi fairly early in that fight. I think if he stands in front of Tom Breese, I think Breese is definitely the better puncher, but I think that Ian can work around it. I think he's got good footwork on the outside with his feints and his fakes, and he's got a lot of kicks from the outside. And he just strikes me as the more game guy mentally. I've seen Breeze break, although it was at 170. We haven't seen it tested at 185. So, I think Heinisch has definitely got him beaten mentally. Not saying that Breeze is a mentally weak guy. I just think that Heinisch, like you said, his background, he's willing to go to a very dark place mentally to get a win. And I think that he's just going to be the more aggressive guy here. I think that he's going to work around Breeze's boxing. I don't think he's going to stand in front of him at all. I think he's going to just find his spots, exploit him, and take advantage of his opportunities. And I think that he will just be the tougher guy throughout the 3 rounds.
Chaz, obviously it's a very intriguing middleweight bout. Ian Heinisch had that impressive debut. Tom Breese, we're not really sure what to think because he's been out for a while, so I got to know your opinion, man.
Yeah, this is another tough one, man. This is what I tweeted out that initially I had a lot of fights that I really thought I really want to throw bets down on, and then after I watched the tape, I'm just like, God, these are just razor thin fights that it's hard to call. I mean, it's tough. some of these matchups, usually during cards, I'm like, I'm very confident in this one. I like this one. I'm very confident in this one. This is one of those cards where I'm just not super, super, super confident in a lot of these fights. But I will say one thing. I think I love the way that Breese stays long, and I like the way that he uses his jab. He's a southpaw. He's a good, strong southpaw. He's a big guy. He's a long guy. I like the way that he uses his jab, and I like the way that he follows it up with his straight. He is pretty stationary. I think Heinisch has he's an explosive guy, and he's got really good kicks. If Ian comes out and really starts putting it on him with kicks early, I think that's going to pay huge dividends with him throughout the fight. However, I don't like how he floats his hands down. Like, I just can see Breese outboxing him here, to be honest with you. I mean, the guy drops his hands. He keeps his hands pretty low. And even Caesar hit him with some pretty decent straights throughout that fight. One thing that I thought that was pretty impressive is that Ian, when he was on bottom, he swiveled his hips for those arm bars. I mean, that was really impressive. His jiu-jitsu in that fight was nice. So I think Tom Breese has great jiu-jitsu. From what I've seen from him, he actually has great jiu-jitsu. I don't know exactly how good his jiu-jitsu is, but I know that he's not afraid to turn his hips and look for submissions. I know that he's going to throw it up there. I'm actually going to go with Breese. I think he's going to stay long, and I think Heinisch just keeps his hands a little too low, and that's worrisome for me. I think this is a good, solid pick'em fight, but I'm going to go with Breese.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of people talk about how Heinisch keeps his hands down, and this is true, but if you're going to mention that, you also have to mention how Breese keeps his right hand down the entire time because he has that boxing style, and, boxers love to keep that lead hand down. That's what Breese does, so I don't think only one guy keeps his hands down in this fight. I think both guys do, but I think it's a little different. I think on the outside, Heinisch kind of has his hands down, but when he kind of closes the distance and tries to come in that pocket, feints a couple times, then his hands start to lift, whereas Breese relies more on the fact that he's 6'3". He probably has a longer reach than these guys, and that boxing background. They love to keep that lead hand down. But what's interesting about Breese is that he's actually a leg lock guy who has a little bit of boxing too. So people think he's a boxer, but the reality is he's a leg lock guy. I mean, the guy's out there competing in Polaris. I know you saw that fight against Keita Nakamura where he was a minus 900 favorite, and at the end of that fight, we weren't sure who won. Now, obviously, he moved up to 185 pounds, best decision he's ever made. Now, I'm not going to be a guy that sits here and, makes fun of someone for having anxiety because, look, we're all human beings. We all go through shit. But when you get a gimme fight, you get the easiest fight on the roster against Oluwale Bangbose. They're trying to give you a highlight reel win in your home country, I believe. I think that was in England. I don't remember off the top of my head. And it's like, dude, we're welcoming you in a middleweight. Here you go. Here's Oluwale. Just get him out of there real quick. And you pull out the day of the fight. Not because you were sick, due to anxiety. Again, not making fun of it. We all go through shit. But that just lets me know right there that, it's not going to ever pan out in terms of the top 15. Because you think Dustin Poirier would ever pull out of a fight on fight day due to anxiety? You think Max Holloway would? You think Chas Skelly would? I know these guys wouldn't. So I'm just saying that I don't think that Breese is necessarily the toughest. And I saw that too in the Sean Strickland fight in round 3. It was 1-1 going to the third. They had to make a choice. And Sean Strickland, who's known for jabbing guys on the outside, was on top of Breese, pounding him. The ref was saying, move fighter, move fighter. So, I mean, and then he moved up to 85. He fought Dan Kelly. I fucking love Dan Kelly. I've had him on the show multiple times. But Dan Kelly, the reality is he's 40-something. He's got 2 knee braces. He's got 2 ankle sleeves. Like, come on, man. And in that fight, he punched him in the eye. Kelly covered up his eye and took a knee. Like, I love Dan Kelly. Dan Kelly's my boy, but we got to be honest about what we saw there. Whereas with Ian Heinisch, listen, it's one thing to make your UFC debut against a guy like Cesar Mutanch. It's another thing to make that UFC debut against Cesar Mutanch off the couch on 6-day short notice. We're talking about with Ferreira, a guy that finished Thiago Majeda Santos, a guy that finished Jack Hermanson, a guy that finished Carl Roberson, a guy that easily decisioned the former 205 number 1 contender Anthony Smith. Cesar Mutanch is fucking legit, not to mention he's a 3rd-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The reason I bring that up is oftentimes Cesar gets on top of someone, and You can look at your watch and count down the seconds to that fight being over shortly after. You remember that Carl Roberson fight? Hermanson, I mean, these are legit guys. Like, you get on top of Hermanson, you think Hermanson's going to survive, get back up. Hermanson was over, bro. And with Heinisch is off his back attacking arm bars. I was like, damn, the fact that he's attacking a third-degree black belt with arm bars and guillotines tells me that, look, for some people, they see it as, oh, he jumped guard versus a third-degree black belt. That's low fight IQ. The way I view it is, well, that was actually a pretty damn close attempt, and if it was against anyone else, he probably would have got it. So I do think that if he jumps guillotine on a guy like Heinisch or tries to set up some kind of submission, against Breese, that I think he will do that. Now, it comes down to what happens on the feet, because we know Breese with those long punches, he's kind of smooth with his boxing, but he also didn't get tagged at all his last fight. So he was able to go out there and front run. Well, I'll tell you someone who is going to tag him, win or lose, and that's Ian Heinisch. He's going to get in his face. He's going to throw big bombs, going to try to mix in the takedowns. And I think that Heinisch wins this fight contingent on him making it a dogfight. If this is a pretty fight where Breese has his range and is able to get off on his long strikes and there's not much resistance, then Breese will go on and win. But if this is a dirty, gritty, bloody dogfight, I got Heinisch all day, and I will take him here for the upset. Next up in the 205-pound division, we got Saparbeg Safarov. He's 8-2, and Negumereanu is 9-0. And Shaq, currently they got Nicolai, the new guy. He's minus 175, and my boy Saparbeg Safarov is plus 155. So real quick, just a little history lesson. So Nick's last two fights, he beat a 10-13 guy and a 2-15 guy. So, I mean, he's a can crusher, but, I mean, the guy's fit, he's athletic, he's handled those cans exactly how you're supposed to. Now he's taking on a Russian with OV as the last two letters of his last name. I gotta know who you got.
For an OV that has losses to John Vellante and
Tyson Pedro.
So, I think Nicolai, or whatever his name is, of course he hasn't really fought anybody, hasn't beaten anybody, but definitely Safarov, I guess, will be his toughest opponent for a few minutes, but Safarov's got an unstable leg. I mean, if you watch this guy's two fights, he's hobbling on one leg, literally. So, I mean, he definitely swings hard. He's Russian. He's got that Russian power, but he's got one leg. So I got Nick.
Chaz, you going with Nicolai or with Safarov?
Man, listen, fuck. I like Safarov. I haven't been impressed with him inside the UFC, but I like the guy. I mean,
he's exciting.
He's ugly, and I like that in a fighter. I like a goofy-looking fighter. I don't like rooting for these pretty muscled-up guys. Get all the sponsorship deals and look good in the clothes, and if you took them to a club, they'd get the ladies. I don't like that. I like a guy like Safarov, who's a fucking goofy-looking dude that, he's not going to take your clothing sponsorships and not going to take your women at the club. It's the type of guy I like to root for. I'm not going to lie to you. But this dude he's fighting, like, when I watch him, I'm like, man, I just feel like Safarov should be the better guy striking. But I also feel like Safarov is really going to play right into this guy's game. When I watch his previous fights, I see a dude that swings wild, but when he connects, he hits really hard. And he's dropping people. And when he gets on top, I mean, he's submitting everybody. I mean, yeah, they suck. They're dudes that are terrible. But he obviously has something going on the ground. I just can't trust Safarov. I'm sorry. I want to. Trust me, I want to. And, man, if he wins, I'll be super happy for him. But I got to say, I can't trust him. I'm picking against him. I hope he does pull it out, but I just can't. I can't. I could see him getting tagged and maybe hurt a little bit on that wobbly leg, and then getting submitted.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably have to go with Nicolai as well. Listen, I'd also love to pick Safarov. Obviously, that fight with Vellante was super exciting. He came right at Tyson Pedro, and even back on the regional scene, there was a fight where at the weigh-ins, him and his opponent are face to face, and he gives his opponent a little a little small slap on the cheek. His opponent returns one back, and then fucking Safarov slaps him like fucking trying to knock him out with the slap. It was pretty amazing. This is at the weigh-in stare down, and now here against Nicolai. I mean, look, Nicolai has only fought complete trash cans, but he handled them accordingly. And we're talking about, this was like the kind of jokes where, like, he's locking in rear naked chokes, and there's only one arm under the chin. Like, he hasn't connected to the bicep. He's not going, cable grip. Like, the shit, like, you even put any resistance on these bums, and they're already tapping out, like, with their legs. You know what I'm saying? So it was those kind of level bums. But, hey, he still destroyed them. And one thing I do like about him, one big weapon I have noticed is, the guy loves firing that leg kick, and that's going to be a big weapon here against Saparbeg, who's only got one leg, man. Go out there, kick that damaged knee, and make him hobble, man, and from there start to tee off. So if Safarov had 2 legs, I'd pick him. I mean, he's an Ov. He's Russian, man. You got to go with the Russian warriors, but I think that he's a little bit diminished here, and for that reason, I will go with Nicolai. Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got Irish Joe Duffy, or as we like to say in Canada, we got Canadian Joe Duffy. He's 16-3, and Marc Diakiese, the Bone Crusher, is 12-3. Well, lately the Bone Crusher, he's been getting crushed, but I gotta know, man. Off a 3-fight skid, you know his back's up against the wall. You know this guy's motivated. You know he knows this is his last chance. And with Duffy, we haven't seen him since he fought James Vick. Just to put that in context, GSP fought more recently than Joe Duffy.
Yeah, Marc Diakiese's back is against the wall. This is it for him against London or Irish Joe Duffy.
Canadian Joe?
But, Joseph Duffy, last fight against James Vick, going into that fight, people were saying things like, there's no way James Vick doesn't get knocked out. And, I mean, Duffy ended up being knocked out. We haven't seen him since. I think he had a couple of injuries. He was supposed to fight Ismagulov. He pulled out of that fight, and then now he's getting Diakiese. Diakiese, I think, was just one of those typical cases of too much given to him too soon, too much hype. I mean, the guy had beaten absolutely he had beaten absolutely nobody. He thought he was Black Dan Hardy with the red mohawk, and I think, when you look at his opponents, he fought Teemu Packalén. He was 1-1 with Frankie Perez going into the third round, and he had to scrape that one. He beat Lucas Sayeski. Guys, if I look at all their combined UFC records, it's well under 500. So, and when he got that step up against a prospect on his level in Jakar, his calves gave out on him. And, he showed heart in that. There's no shame in losing to a top prospect, especially like Jakar. But then, it's just been consistent decline ever since. After that fight, he fought Hooker, where he was the favorite in that fight as well. We were thinking Hooker, he's still unproven at 55. So let's give him a top prospect like Diakiese just coming off a split. And the entire time he was getting picked apart. Then he ended up shooting into a takedown and getting tapped out. And he tapped right away. And then his next fight against Nasrat Haqparast, he was the favorite again against an inexperienced kid that just lost to Marcin Held. And it was another, decline from the last performance. And he got broken from the first round all the way through this time. I know Nasrat's definitely got a lot more pressure than Joseph Duffy, but it's been consistent decline with Diakiese. Now, Joe Duffy, I think, is another case of complete hype machine. His two big tests against Dustin Poirier and James Vick, he failed miserably. So that just lets you know he's not on that level. And his wins are against absolutely nobody. Mitch Clark, Batman George,
the Librarian Lindsay.
Jake Librarian Lindsay. He's beaten absolutely nobody. And Reza Madadi. Like I said, he's beaten absolutely nobody. So, I do think these guys...
He beat Conor McGregor.
that is true. But,
in under a minute.
Yeah. He beat Conor McGregor. Conor's been tapping for a long time, man. But Joseph Duffy, I do think these guys are actually on a fairly even playing field. I think both of these guys were just big hype machines. The key to beating Diakiese seems like a lot of pressure. Joseph Duffy does have good boxing, and we kind of seen Hooker kind of use a similar strategy with the jab and kind of fluster Diakiese with that long, rangy movement. But one thing Hooker and Duffy have that it's a little bit different is just their chin. Hooker has a very good chin, and I question Duffy's chin. I think even though he's only been knocked out one time against James Vick, in that Dustin Poirier fight, he got real nervous. He used all his energy in those boxing combinations early, and then he completely gassed out. And then the James Vick fight, he got knocked out in the second round. I know that's a 6'3" guy, but I might not necessarily have the facts to say he has a bad chin, but I could see the potential for him, in the future getting knocked out more times. Now, Diakiese, I think, has a fairly good chin. It's just Diakiese, to beat him, you need that constant pressure. You need to have an answer for his wrestling, and if you do that, you're generally going to beat him. Does Duffy have the answer to his wrestling? He's been taken down before. He's been taken down by Reza Madadi. He's been taken down by Dustin Poirier. He's
Ivan the Terrible.
Ivan George. Ivan Mercado took him down, tapped him out. So, Diakiese has a path to victory.
Kyle Watson.
Exactly. And Kyle Watson. I mean, Duffy's had some suspect moments on that mat, man. So, I don't think Diakiese necessarily has the jiu-jitsu to tap him out, but maybe he gets a couple extra takedowns. But, man, it's such a tough fight to call. I think Diakiese is 100% live, but I'm just going to pick Duffy just because I have a feeling you're going to pick Diakiese. But I just think that I don't trust either guy at first. I think both guys long-term are done. I just think that maybe Duffy throws the more punches. Diakiese's a little more timid if the fight progresses, starts thinking a little bit more like he's been doing these last few fights. I think Diakiese could catch him with a shot or possibly take him down, but I just slightly lean Duffy, but very slightly. I don't trust either guy.
Chaz, look, Diakiese is undefeated in the UK, but as you know, 3-fight skid, man. His back's up against the wall. He desperately needs this win. Joe Duffy's been talking retirement, but one could argue he has the better skills here, so tough fight, man. Who you got?
Man, I could see this going one of two ways. Like, for me, I think, Diakiese's the much more athletic guy. He's a very athletic guy. I hope that he's evolved because, he was relying a lot on his athleticism and he kind of got, in his last few fights, he really got exposed. He got frustrated. The pressure was just too much for him. I feel like he's a really good hammer and just not such a good nail, per se. So, to me, and I didn't even watch tape on this one, I look at this fight as, I think Duffy's the tougher customer. I think Duffy is going to put some pressure on him. And I actually think that if it goes to the mat, Duffy has the way better jiu-jitsu. I mean, Duffy's jiu-jitsu is not bad. I mean, it's because, his grappling's not bad. And maybe Diakiese's got the better wrestling, and maybe he can get the takedowns. I don't see him. I think that if he can come out and really tag Duffy up in the first round and get him out of there, that's one thing. But if he doesn't get him out of there in the first round, I don't see him winning the fight. And I think Duffy's going to come back, put some pressure on him, and probably win the next 2 rounds. I'm going to take Duffy.
Vic said the exact same thing to me. He said that if Diakiese doesn't get him out in the first round, that Duffy's going to take over. I can see where you guys are coming from for sure, but my whole thing is, you guys make a good point because we saw Diakiese get broken in the later rounds, his last few fights, to an extent. Against Drakkar, it was 2-0, Drakkar going to the third. It was Diakiese who won the third round. But man, against Hooker, it was 2-0 Hooker, and obviously Diakiese shot that takedown, and it was over shortly after. But here with Duffy, I don't feel like Duffy is the kind of guy that comes back from, that has a lot of comeback wins. Like this guy we're going to talk about, Arnold Allen, here in a little bit. I feel like Joseph Duffy, everything has to be going perfectly for him. And to an extent, I can say that about Diakiese, but I want to go back to an example that I've mentioned so many times when we've broken down Diakiese fights in the past, and maybe it's irrelevant at this point, but maybe it's a sign of things to come in the future, because in the past, in that fight with Frankie Perez, and, on one hand, you can view it as, well, Frankie Perez is a bum, why was it 1-1 going into the third? And you might have a fair point, but what I'm trying to get at is it was 1-1 heading into the third round. He had to make that choice, and he did make that choice. He got those takedowns to seal off the round and win that 29-28. So the fact that he had that urgency and those instincts back then, I know he's fallen on some really tough matchups, kind of gives me a little hope that he might be able to do that here if this fight is close. Now, when the fight first starts, I do think Joe Duffy's going to light him up because in the first couple minutes of any Joe Duffy fight, I mean, the guy's got an advantage. His boxing is serious. He's got good speed, good accuracy, even against Dustin the Diamond Poirier. But what was interesting about that fight, and this is something that we see with a lot of guys that have success on the regional scene, then they come to the UFC, you hit someone on the regional scene with your hardest shot, and sometimes the fight might be over right then and there. So even early UFC fights for Joe Duffy, you know, he hits Jake Lindsay one time and the fight's over, right? Well, he hits Dustin Poirier with his hardest shot, and Dustin Poirier is still coming forward. Well, all of a sudden, the mindset and the psychology of Joe Duffy completely changes. So I want to see if he hits Diakiese as hard as he can and Diakiese's still walking forward, what's going to happen then? And I do think that if that happens, that Diakiese can take over in the second and third round. And just simply because he wants it more, man. He's not the more skilled guy here. We've established that. Joe Duffy's got the better skills. But sometimes it's not the skill of the man. Sometimes it's the will of the man. And I know 3 fights in a row on that skid, he loses his fight. He's out the UFC. Whereas Duffy, he's got a little room. He's got a little wiggle room. You know, he can lose this fight. It'll only be a 2-fight skid. They'll still give him one more. But with Diakiese, it's win or go find another job. And that has to be serious motivation for Diakiese. So for that reason, I'm going to ever so slightly pick Marc Diakiese to grind this one out against Joseph Duffy. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got Arnold Allen. He's 13-1, and Jordan Rinaldi is 14-6. And currently they got Arnold Allen -140. The comeback on Jordan Rinaldi is +120. Chaz, this is your weight class, man. These are 2 very exciting guys. Obviously with Arnold Allen, he's undefeated in the UFC at 4-0. And with Jordan Rinaldi, he had a career resurgence dropping the featherweight. You saw that performance he had against Jason Knight. So now I got to know, man, who you got, Allen or Rinaldi?
You know, it's kind of weird because I actually like Rinaldi here. I think that Rinaldi showed like really good takedowns, really good control in the Jason Knight fight. I feel like Arnold Allen was absolutely losing to Mads Burnell. He got that guillotine in the third, but I think that Rinaldi's going to be smart here. I think that he's going to keep his head out of the hole there because Arnold Allen has caught a few people with that guillotine. And I honestly think that Jordan Rinaldi is going to take him down and grind out a win here on the top.
Shaq, obviously very intriguing matchup. We mentioned many times that we wanted Jordan Rinaldi to finally get over that hump. Well, guess what? He did get over that hump. And now this is his second prelim main event in a row, taking on the very tough Arnold Allen. What's your opinion?
Man, Jordan Rinaldi looked really good his last fight. I mean, that was a 30-25 performance. He dominated every second of that fight. And one thing I liked about that fight is in the past, people's always questioned Rinaldi's mental game. Well, he had his opportunity to check out in that third round, and I mean, he took him right back down, and he dominated Jason Knight, man. That was very impressive as a big underdog too. He was like a 2-1 underdog, I think he was. So that was very impressive. Arnold Allen, how I see them matching up. One thing that's clear about Arnold Allen is he gets taken down in every single fight, and kind of at will, man. I mean, he doesn't really seem to fight the takedowns too much. It seems like he likes to rely with his jiu-jitsu off his back and just keep making guys work and then, capitalizing when he gets back up to the feet. I think that in this matchup, it's kind of a grappler versus striker. A striker with a little bit of jiu-jitsu. I think Rinaldi has a clear path to advantage. So Rinaldi's definitely live. I mean, he can definitely come out here, get some takedowns, win two out of 3 rounds, and win this decision. Like I said, how many times has Arnold Allen been taken down?
12 times.
He's been taken down 12 times in his UFC career. So there's one thing that's going to happen here. Jordan Rinaldi will take him down. So, so I think if Rinaldi, like Chad said, if he comes out here and plays this smart and just maneuvers enough on the feet to buy time to get another takedown, because like we said, it doesn't seem like doesn't seem like he wants to even fight the takedown. So I think that Rinaldi has a clear path to victory. I'm just a little worried that if Allen's his jiu-jitsu can maybe nullify a little bit, and maybe if he can get back up to his feet, what's going to happen there? Because he is the clearly better striker, in my opinion. I think he's got great 1s and 2s, and I think Rinaldi's weakness is his striking. He's not a striker at all. He's a grappler. So I think if he somehow can get Rinaldi back out on the feet after using a lot of energy with the grappling, kind of similar to the Ige and Henry matchup. Not saying that Rinaldi has bad cardio, but I think Allen might have the possibility to hurt him on the feet, and capitalize. Kind of seem not like Mads Burnell, but Mads Burnell wanted no parts of the stand-up with with Arnold Allen. But I think this is a very closely matched fight. I think Rinaldi's a very live dog, but I just slightly still lean Arnold Allen to take advantage of his opportunity when he gets it back to the feet and get a late finish. But I think Rinaldi made the right move to moving down to 145. He's huge at 145, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if he came out here and won a close decision.
Man, I cannot wait for this fight. Obviously, a very intriguing matchup in the featherweight division. Jordan Rinaldi, a guy that I've been very familiar with for a long time. Obviously, mentioned to you guys since his UFC debut. I saw him fight in the NFC against UFC veteran Clay Harbison. After he choked him out, I walked right up to Jordan Rinaldi. I said, be expecting a call from the UFC within the next 6 months. Well, within the next 6 months, he got that UFC call. Goes out there against Abel Trujillo. 1-1 heading into the third round. Unfortunately, he lost the third round. Next fight goes out there against Alvaro Herrera. Handles him exactly how you're supposed to, which is don't even make this a close fight. Just blow this guy out the water in the first round. That's exactly what Rinaldi did. Took care of him accordingly. And by the way, Alvaro made it past the first round with Vicente, just to let you know. But Rinaldi took care of him in under 2 minutes. Then the next fight, kind of got set up a little bit against Gregor Gillespie, but for some fighters, that Gregor Gillespie fight, especially how it went down, that could have been a moment where he said, you know what, man, I had a good run. I made it to the UFC. You can tell your friends, I'm a UFC vet. I even won one fight in the UFC. I even became the third man in UFC history to win a fight via Von Flue chokes. That's what he's accomplished already. He could have packed it in. But you know what Jordan Rinaldi did? He said, you know what, man, I'm going to get over that hump. He drops a weight class. Now all of a sudden he's one of the bigger men at featherweight. And in that fight with Jason Knight, because, now it's easy to talk about how after that Lamas fight that Jason Knight kind of, he got caught up in the lifestyle and all that shit. But the reality is that going into that fight with Rinaldi, a lot of people were saying that Knight's too tough for Rinaldi. Also, the fight with Makwan Amirkhani, even though it was a loss for Knight, a lot of people thought Knight might have won. He dropped Makwan Amirkhani twice in that fight. Well, there was zero dropping Jordan Rinaldi. There was zero offense against Jordan Rinaldi. It was a complete shutout from pillar to post. And there were even times on the feet where Rinaldi landed a nice left hook, and I was like, damn, this guy's been putting in work. And I've actually seen Rinaldi in the practice room before. I've seen him spar with some of the best guys here in Georgia, Jared Good and Robert Hale. Rinaldi's been putting in work. And what I like about this kid, Arnold Allen, is his tenacity, is the spirit that he fights with, and the fact that it's never over until it's over with a guy like Arnold Allen. Because you've seen all his comeback wins. You saw the Alan Omer win. You saw the Mads Burnell win. The guy has a knack for the comeback. Even that Makwan Amirkhani fight was up in the air, and he was able to go out there and seal it off. But man, he's definitely got a weakness with the takedown defense. Like you mentioned, he doesn't even try to fight those takedowns. He's been taken down 12 times inside the octagon. That's credit to his confidence with his scrambling ability, his jiu-jitsu, his get-up game. And he just feels like he can go out there and knock anyone out. So on the feet, Jordan has to be super careful. He's got to maneuver around. Don't get into any unnecessary exchanges. But when Allen comes forward, that's when you duck under, take him to the mat. And Allen is going to be able to get back up from a couple of these takedowns, but Rinaldi can't get discouraged. He's got to stay on that grind, and I think if he does, he can go out here and get his second UFC win in a row and start to let people know that, hey, Jordan Rinaldi is a new man at featherweight. He has gone over the hump, and I think he gets another UFC win here. Hey guys, Dan here. Just wanted to remind you that Kyle Marley's bets are available at bestfightpicks.com. As you know, he's in the midst of a 200-unit run, and at UFC 235, he won 30 units on that card alone. And with Kyle Marley, he's not doing 1 unit equals 1% of your bankroll. He's doing 1 unit equals $100. So he won $3,000 that night at UFC 235. Faced a little roadblock on this Lewis for JDS card, but now he's got a 10-unit play this weekend at UFC London. He's going to win big and continue the long-term winning ways. Make sure you go to bestfightpicks.com to get Kyle Marley's plays and his DraftKings write-ups. Now, next up in the middleweight division, we got Jack Marshman. He's 22-8, and John Phillips is 21-8. And currently, they got Jack Marshman minus 165. The comeback on John Phillips is plus 145. Shaq, it's an interesting fight because the 2 times we've seen John Phillips inside the octagon, he has gotten choked out. Now, interestingly enough, Jack Marshman has never shot for a takedown in all of his UFC fights. So this might kind of give John Phillips the fight he wants. What do you think?
Yeah. I think pretty much a lot of people are looking at it from the angle, or if the angle, what if Marshman shoots? But considering Phillips' 2 UFC fights against Bird and Holland, I think he made improvements in between there. Bird is a little bit more hell-bent on the grappling exchanges than Kevin Holland. And Birdie got completely dominated for sure. And then his fight against Kevin Holland, I mean, Holland was on his back before that tap out, like a couple times, and he got out of it. He got out of an armbar, a triangle, man. I thought he made improvements in his jiu-jitsu, so I think he actually is taking it seriously, man. So, I think Marshman, on the other hand, is on the decline. I think Marshman is pretty much that fan entertaining, one-dimensional, big puncher, man. We know what Marshman's gonna come with. He's gonna swing bombs, and against these guys that he's been fighting, it's not gonna work out. He's just too easy to game plan for. We saw Carlos Jr. take him right down. It's same thing with Marshman and Phillips. You take Marshman down, that's pretty much it. In this particular matchup, when I look at both guys' strengths, I see it being a stand-up fight, and I see John Phillips just being the better guy in their strength. I think John Phillips has the better chin of the two. I think he has the big presence of the two. I think he can kind of close the distance on Jack Marshman and just start exchanging. I think he's got the better power. I think Marshman has good power, but I think John Phillips just has just better power. I think when he hits guys on the chin, I think they really feel it. I mean, Kevin Holland's eyes rolled back in that fight. He was looking off to his corner in that fight. I mean, he even told Phillips, I had to take you down. So, I think Phillips is just a better power puncher. I think this fight's going to be fairly done quickly. I think within the first round, I think they're just going to see who the better man is. And I think Phillips is just a better guy when it comes to knocking people out.
Chas Skelly, Kevin Holland's been in there with a guy like Thiago Maeda Santos, and he said that John Phillips is the hardest he's ever been hit in a fight ever. So I gotta know, man, are you going with Jack Marshman or John Phillips?
This fight's just like a dogger pass for me. I mean, I can't give anybody advice on either one of these guys of who to pick. I would take Phillips based only on the fact that I don't think Marshman's going to go for a takedown. Phillips has a terrible ground game. And Marshman's never shot for a takedown. Phillips hits like a truck. But if you see that and you realize that, you have to think to yourself, I should just go out there and take this guy down because he's awful on the ground. So you have to think that unless Marshman and his corner just don't want to win, that they're going to go out there and look for a takedown. But, I mean, having said that also, I've trained with Charles Byrd, and Charles actually has pretty good wrestling and jiu-jitsu. Like, I mean, he's no slouch for sure. He's a strong dude, and he's got good wrestling. He's got good body locks and stuff. He's got good jiu-jitsu. Kevin Holland, I've never trained with him, but he's also from the DFW area. And I've heard people say that he's very talented on the ground. So, it's not like he was fighting two guys that don't know what they're doing on the ground. So just for the sake of picking somebody, and I have to go dog or pass, I'm going to go Phillips, just because I think that Marshman probably isn't going to shoot a takedown, and Phillips is probably going to knock him out.
Yeah, I mean, look, you bring up good points. I feel like if you're picking someone to beat Phillips, you need someone that's going to get this fight to the mat right away. So you look at Jack Marshman. Well, 5 UFC fights, over 50 minutes of UFC fight footage. Hasn't shot for a single takedown. We know what Marshman likes to do. He likes to go in there, stand and bang with guys. Now, when you're talking about a guy like John Phillips, on the regional scene, they used to call him the Welsh Wrecking Machine. They used to call him the White Mike Tyson. And the reason why is because he has 25 first-round finishes. Now, it's easy to sit here and be like, oh, well, all you got to do is take this guy down or get past the first round. And, yeah, if you're Kevin Holland, if you're Charles Byrd, guys who do have grappling backgrounds, by all means. But a guy like Jack Marshman, who he likes to stand and trade. Look, this is the one fight on the card where these two are going to stand and bang until one man falls. The thing here is that Phillips has a better chin and he hits harder. So for that reason, I think that John Phillips is going to hand Jack Marshman his 5th knockout loss, and I will pick John Phillips here to get his first UFC win. Now, next up in the welterweight division, Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts. He's 16-3, and Claudio Hannibal Silva is 12-1. Between you and me is 13-0 because his one loss was a DQ. So that being said, Claudio Silva was -145. The comeback on Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts is +125. Chaz, I'm gonna let you go first, man. I mean, Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts is your teammate. You know this guy firsthand. Give us the inside info, my man.
Yeah, so I've got two teammates on this card, Volkan and Danny. I'm not gonna obviously you know who I'm going with. I got to go with my teammate. So that's a no-brainer. But I'll give you a little breakdown of what I think that has to happen in order for them to win. You look at a guy like Claudio, and you see him, and he goes out there and he's sloppy. His striking is very sloppy. His entries on his takedowns are awful, and he's a little plotty. He's a little slow. But one thing that he is good at, he's very sticky. So you don't have to have the best entries to takedowns. You have to have good finishes. He has good finishes. It's crazy. He can grab your leg, and he looks so awful getting into a shot, but then he runs the pipe really well, and he switches off to a double, and he actually will just drag you to the ground. And once you get to the ground, he has great jiu-jitsu. He has good shoulder pressure. He gets on your back, and he has great chokes. So that being said, Danny is a very athletic dude. He hits hard as fuck. I mean, he really does. He hits hard, man. I go with him sometimes and just going with him. He really, really, really does hit hard. And he's very quick. He's very athletic. He has good takedown defense. I think Danny can really, really, really win this fight out there. He's got to go out there. He's got to stay moving. He's got to keep his feet moving. He's got to keep his jab on this guy, and he's got to really throw those straight punches. Don't get caught up in that brawling exchange, because what this guy wants to do is he wants to throw some looping overhands. He wants to brawl, and then he wants to dive at your legs. And once he grabs your legs, he wants to just crawl up and leech on you and drag you to the ground. I do believe that Danny can stay away from that. He's very athletic. He's very quick. And I think that that's going to be a huge advantage for him in this fight with a guy that's very plotty, not very athletic. I think Danny's just got to stick with the game plan, stick and move, and I think he wins this fight.
Well, Shaq, obviously Chas Skelly broke it down very well. We know Danny Hot Chocolate hits like a fucking truck, but we also know Claudio Silva gets on top of you one time. The fight might be over shortly after. So are you going with, in this case, the striker or the grappler?
Yeah, that's a big factor in this fight, because Chas, he said some really good points there. I feel like Claudio Silva is always going to be one of these hard guys to gauge because, like Chas said, he looks awful and he makes so many errors in a lot of things that he does. It's like one of these days he's going to get absolutely knocked out, caught, and embarrassed. It's just that, like you just said, if he gets the fight on the mat one time, that might be over. So I feel like Chas said, him swinging those wild, loopy punches is all a trick, kind of like Heinisch or, it's all a trick just to get you to react wildly so he could get on your legs. And that's just a hard thing to gauge in this fight, because I feel like Hot Chocolate does have the power to take him out with one shot if he makes that glaring mistake like he tends to do in a lot of his fights. Turning the wrong way, like the Brad Scott fight where he's, completely looking for ways out, man. So I feel like Hot Chocolate is live, but it's just so hard to gauge because Claudio Silva's not a first-degree black belt, not a second-degree black belt. He's a third-degree black belt, man. Like kind of what we saw with Carlos Diego and Rustam the other day at the end of that first round. If there was 10 more seconds left,
2 more seconds.
That's what those third-degree guys, that's what they do. And we saw the Nordine fight, man. Well, firstly, Nordine could have got up, but he went for the TriStar leg lock instead. And once he did that, once
you go for that TriStar leg lock.
So I feel like Hot Chocolate's mental game, man. Hot Chocolate's got some of the best heart, man. He fights with so much spirit in all of his fights, win or lose. The issue out there in Hot Chocolate is that people think that he has a bad chin. But, I feel like if you get caught with a Nordine head kick in the first, 30 seconds of the fight, you saw what Nordine did to Strickland that first round. He was winning that first. He's got a very good first round.
Fucking hard.
Yeah, he kicks very hard. And then they fought a gorilla, Dominick T. Still, man. That guy is really big. I felt like he was outsized in that fight. And Hot Chocolate's heart won him those fights. So, I feel like Hot Chocolate is a very live underdog. I'm actually take him for the upset. I think that Claudio Silva is gonna have his moments here early, maybe wobble him, maybe kind of have him down, but I feel like he's going to make that one glaring mistake in his striking, like Chas was saying, and get knocked out.
That's obviously a possibility, no doubt about this. This stays standing for more than a couple minutes, and Danny Hot Chocolate will knock out Claudio Silva. But that being said, man, this guy Claudio Silva, it's not a matter of if he gets on top of you. It's not just survive until the next round, and the next round starts on the feet. It's pretty much if he gets on top of you, the fight's over, because you saw that mount he had on Nordine and those vicious elbows he was landing. Man, that ground and pound. Like, we talked about his jiu-jitsu. What about his ground and pound, man? He's so nasty with it, and we're already talking about a resume where he beat Leon Edwards before Leon Edwards' big win streak. He beat Brad Scotch back before Brad Scotch was doing cocaine in octagon fights. He fucking went out there and finished Nordine Taleb in the very first round. So, Claudio Silva, man, he's the original Brazilian weasel, man. He fucking makes that shit work.
He's a cheater.
And, listen, I'm going to be rooting for Danny Hot Chocolate. You know, it's your teammate, Chaz. I hope he goes out there and wins, but fuck, that jiu-jitsu really scares me. I'm going to lean with Vegas on this one. I'm going to go with Claudio Silva via submission. Now, next up in the bantamweight division, we got Nathaniel Wood. He's 15-3, and Jose Alberto Quinones, or as we like to say in Mexico, Teco, is 7-2. And currently, they got Nathaniel Wood minus 325. The comeback on Jose Teco Quinones is plus 265. Now, what's interesting, Shaq, is that Nathaniel Wood was pick'em against Andre Uhl. Now he's a massive favorite against Teco Quinones. What's your opinion?
Yeah, I think Nathaniel Wood's one of the top prospects at bantamweight. I think Jose Teco Quinones has a good style to beat these low-level guys like Diego Rivas and Teruto Ishihara, you know, with his footwork, his good cardio. He's a solid point fighter. He definitely knows how to strategize and win decisions. I don't think he has any finishes in the UFC. And Nathaniel Wood, I just think, is the better overall guy, man. I think he's got more power. And one thing about Jose that a lot of people don't know is he's extremely chinny. I mean, we saw it in the Teruto fight, but just type in Davi Ramos versus Jose Quinones. This is a fight back at lightweight. I don't know why he was fighting.
If you want to know the origins of that chin,
Davi Ramos landed how many hammer fists to his chin?
Man,
flush?
It was devastating.
Jose, I don't want to say he's in big trouble here, but he's in big trouble here. I think Wood's serious, man. I think he's got a bright future. I think he's focused. I think at some point he will touch that chin of Jose Quinones and either tap him out with a rear naked choke shortly after, or just 30-26, you know?
Chaz, both of these guys have been very impressive. Obviously, Nathaniel Wood's 2-0 in the UFC. Jose is, I believe, 4-1 in the UFC. So, shit, man. Who do you think takes the next step?
I'm going to be honest with you. When I watch this, when I look at these two guys, and I don't mean any disrespect, because I think Jose has been doing really well for himself. I think he's on the tear right now. But I see two guys that, in my opinion, are just at different levels right now. I like the way that Woods really mixes it up. He's got good striking. He's got good submissions. God, man, I really can see pretty much what Shaq said. You know, either him catching Jose fairly early in the fight, or even if he does just get the takedown, submitting him. I really think it's Woods is going to take this pretty early.
Yeah, Woods definitely impressed me. A lot of people gave him a lot of shit because he took a lot of punches in that Johnny Eduardo fight. To me, I was like, dude, Johnny Eduardo hits like a truck. I mean, you see what Johnny Eduardo did to Eddie Wineland's chin? So the fact that Nathaniel Wood ate those shots, came back, finished the fight, then the very next one he had a clean performance against Andre Uhl. And Nathaniel Wood's not a guy who, you know, needs to sit here and get a little seasoning, because on this Cage Warriors run, he was as tested as they get, man. I mean, there were fights where it looked like he was out, and then he went back and knocked the guy out. You guys remember that fucking insane one-round fight he had in Cage Warriors. Go back and check that out. So, Nathaniel Wood's been putting in work. I like Teco too, man. I mean, look, Teco's a fun Mexican to fight. He to watch fight. He's got a lot of spirit. He tries to kind of be the Mexican Dominick Cruz. He feints a lot. He uses his footwork. And if you're not quite on his level, he will go out there and he will style on you. But unfortunately for him, Wood is not only on his level, Wood has surpassed his level. I think Wood comes out here and gets a highlight reel knockout in the first round. Now, next up in the light heavyweight division, we got Dominick Reyes. He's 10-0, and Volkan No Time Oezdemir is 15-3. Well, Chaz, you mentioned earlier on the show that Volkan Oezdemir is a teammate of yours. Unfortunately for this camp, he wasn't able to do it in Florida. I believe he did it in his home country of Switzerland. Regardless, what's your perspective on this fight?
You know, it's kind of one of those things. I'm really high on Dominick Reyes. I really like the guy. I mean, gosh, he's definitely, in my opinion, well, there's three huge prospects, three young guys that are huge prospects, and he's one of them. I think he's the best of them, of the three.
Who are the three? Johnny Walker, Jim Crute, and Dominick?
No, not
Rakic?
Rakic, yeah. Rakic and Reyes.
So is the third Johnny Walker?
Yeah, Walker.
Okay. Showing my boy some love.
So, you know, I think it's one of those things where Volkan can't wait. You know, he can't wait around. He can't Ovid St. Pruitt because, man, that guy looked good against Ovid St. Pruitt. I mean, he looked good. Like, he came out there and really picked him apart. And I can't even think of and I think I was drinking during that fight, but I can't think of a second where I thought Ovid St. Pruitt was winning the fight.
That's because there wasn't a second that he was winning.
Yeah,
maybe in the third round, but aside from that.
Yeah. The guy looked good, man. He's very impressive. He's a very impressive guy. But having said that, there's not a lot of people with that power that Volkan has. I mean, he knocks people out with just fucking short hooks from a clinch, and knocks them dead. So, I'd like to see Volkan go out there and be first and stay in his face, man. Like, don't let him be pretty. Don't make it a pretty fight. Go out there and really stay in his face and really pressure him and make him fucking brawl you, And obviously for Reyes, I think that Reyes is going to want to, stay at distance, use his length and stay pretty and just also be first with the longer, jabs and teep kicks and things of that nature. But I hope Volkan comes out and really closes the gap and pressures him and makes the guy fight.
So I forgot to mention the odds. Currently they got Dominick Reyes minus 265. The comeback on Volkan Oezdemir is plus 225. Now, one thing going in Volkan's favor, Shaq, is that he's already in Europe, so he's not going to be dealing with the same jet lag as Dominick Reyes. Do you think that could possibly aid him to victory here?
I think Volkan Oezdemir had a great run at 205 with those KOs over Misha Serkinov and Jimmy Manuwa in less than a minute, both of them. And then I think he just got kind of rushed up in that title fight with DC. I think he probably needed like one more fight, but hey, when opportunity calls, you got to take it. And then his fight with Anthony Smith, I also thought going into that fight that was just a bad matchup for him, just considering, Volkan historically is a guy that likes to get people out of there in that first round with a big punch. And Anthony's a guy that most of his wins are, the comeback style of wins. Historically, if you look at Volkan's resume, if you get him out that first round, generally people have a lot of success. So, like Chaz was saying, I think Reyes is a good prospect at 205. I think that if he plays this smart and avoids that one big punch from Oezdemir in the early rounds, I think that he could either coast to a decision or possibly get a late finish, kind of similar like the OSP fight. I think Oezdemir has definitely a puncher's chance, but I think Reyes is going to win this fight, hands down, though.
I'm going to agree with you as well, man, because even though I respect what Oezdemir did, I mean, coming in there on short notice against OSP and not just taking the fight, but winning the fight was very impressive. And then obviously he was a big underdog to Misha Serkunov and even an underdog to Jimmy Manuwa, knocked them both out in under a minute. And I felt like that first round against DC, even though it ended up with him on his back, the first couple of minutes, he was throwing as hard as he could at DC. So the guy wasn't scared at all. And even that fight with Anthony Smith, it seemed like he might have won the first round and a half there too. So Volkan Oezdemir, this isn't going to just be Dominick Reyes, like that Joachim Christensen or Jeremy Kimball. This isn't going to just be a walk in the park. However, ultimately, the biggest issue I have seen in Volkan's game is the same thing he's been criticized very much, that if he doesn't get that first round knockout, he does seem to slow down. And it's not because he has some cardio issue, it's because the guy goes so fucking hard trying to get that KO that he throws everything he has into it. And I think if that's the case here against Dominick Reyes, that Dominick can weather that storm and get the finishing blow late. But if not, I could actually see this being a 3-round war. I'm going to go with Dominick Reyes for the victory. Now, is it co-main event time already? Co-main event of the evening in the welterweight division. We got Leon Rocky Edwards. He's 16-3, and Gunnar Gunny Nelson is 17-3. Man, this is going to be a hell of a fight because initially Leon Edwards was known as being the surgical pinpoint striker at 170. Then he fights Kamaru. All of a sudden, now he's Britain's premier D1 wrestler. And with Gunny Nelson, obviously you know about his kind of jiu-jitsu. So he's the one guy at SBG that can tap people out. So who you got in this matchup?
Yeah, it's a very tough fight to call. Gunnar Nelson, I mean, look at his resume. He's got wins over Omari, Alex Cowboy. I mean, he's got some wins on that resume, man. And then Leon, like you said, ever since he lost to Kamaru, this guy's been looking better fight to fight. Only that kind of suspect fight he had was the Barberina fight, but a lot of people have, suspect.
Who doesn't have a tough fight with Barberina?
Who doesn't have a tough fight with Barb? So,
who doesn't almost get knocked out by Barberina?
But, I think how they match up, I think Gunnar is definitely, better at jiu-jitsu. I mean, we know his jiu-jitsu credentials, but I think Leon, if they grapple, can out-muscle him and just kind of Alex Cowboy had him down on the mat in top, and he just kept making stupid mistakes and giving up his back. And Gunnar, if you do that against a guy like Gunnar, he will capitalize. I don't think Leon makes those type of mistakes. I think Leon's very smart. I think as long as he's focused, as long as he's not a little bit too cocky, which
he is known for,
which he is cocky a little bit right now. I think that he's the better striker on the feet. I think that Gunny is one of those guys that you can't underestimate. That's why I'm saying this. You can't sleep on a guy like Gunny, because when you sleep on him, then you're going to be tapping the mat unconscious. So he has to be focused here, because I think he has a very clean game. I think he's the better striker, like I said, with that hard left kick. And his wrestling, man, he doesn't get his top control. He's strong, and he can get those takedowns in every round and maintain his cardio, except the Barberina fight. But I think Leon should get a win here as long as he's focused, a tough decision win. Gunnar's going to stay in there for 3 rounds most likely, just because he's not the type of guy to quit. But I got Leon by a 30-27.
Chaz, it's interesting, man. You going with Leon or you going with Gunny? Who takes the next step towards that welterweight top 10?
Man, I got to go with Leon. I think, I'm just really impressed by this guy. I think he really mixes it well. I've actually been impressed by his grappling too. I'm not saying that he's not going to be the better grappler in this fight. I think Gunnar Nelson is going to be the better grappler. Gunnar Nelson has a great top game, but I don't think Gunnar Nelson is going to be able to take him down. I really don't. I think that Edwards. I think that one thing that he's very athletic. He's an athletic guy. He's an explosive guy. But I think that one thing that really plays in his favor is the way that he feints a lot and he cocks his hips a lot. He feints with everything. He doesn't just throw. He sets things up. He's very good moving forward, and he's very good moving backwards. And I like the way that he throws feints. Sometimes I think his defense has a little bit of holes in it as far as striking, but man, he looks good. His striking game looks really good. He's strong. I think he can possibly muscle him around in there a little bit on the takedown and the takedown defense. I think that after Leon Edwards stuffs a couple shots, I think Nelson's gonna. I'm not gonna say panic, because I like that guy too. I really like him. I mean, it's hard for me to pick against him because I've actually been a Gunnar Nelson fan for a while. I really enjoy watching him fight, but ever since I've been watching Edwards, I've been super impressed. I like the little things that he does in transition, and I think that he stuffs the takedowns. I think he keeps it standing here. I actually even think that maybe he gets a takedown or two of his own in there, and I think he wins this fight for sure.
I'm going to complete the hat trick, boys. I'm going to go with Leon Edwards as well, because what's interesting about this fight for me is that it seems like with Gunny Nelson, when he gets that mount on guys or when he takes guys back, oftentimes he chokes them out. And with Leon, I feel like I'm going to go on record and say that he's one of the most improved fighters we've ever seen in the 170-pound division, because if you watch that fight with Claudio Silva, where Claudio's picking him up and Matt Hughes walking him across the octagon and slamming him easily, then you watch that fight with Kamaru, where it was a little bit more improvement. He won the first round, but kind of got grinded out in the second and third. Then you see that win streak he's on now, where he's going out there against guys like Peter Sabata, who's a very respected jiu-jitsu black belt, and you see the kind of work Leon Edwards is doing on that mat. that to me is all the evidence I need that this guy's been putting in work and that he's very serious about rounding out his game. And with Gunnar Nelson, he's a very skilled guy. Obviously, on the feet, he kind of lulls you into that false sense of security. He's got that karate stance, and then you start to be like, oh, he's not going to do anything. Then all of a sudden, he blitzes you with a very, very fast combination, ties you up against the fence. Now, in that tie-up, what's interesting to me, what I'm trying to figure out, and maybe you can comment on this, Chas, is that, so a lot of people have said that Gunny maybe is best suited for 155 pounds. Now, I respectfully disagree, even though he's a smaller welterweight. To me, it kind of seemed like a Mirsad Bektic situation where the guy looks small, but when you tie up with him, you're like, holy fuck, he's strong. Do you agree with that, Chas?
Yeah, I never really thought he looked all that small. I've always thought he looked like a decent size welterweight, but yeah, you just never know, man, the density of some of these guys. And not to mention, it doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter weight classes, they have weight classes for a reason, but everybody is different. Like for me, I like to cut weight. I don't like it. It's miserable. It fucking sucks. But like, I feel like cutting weight keeps me disciplined. My diet has to be perfect. Keeps my cardio up because I run a ton to make sure I'm losing those pounds, and cutting weight makes me feel like I'm prepared for the fight. If somebody feels better on fight day by just walking around close to their weight, it doesn't really matter as long as they're strong and they feel good during the fight. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've never really thought that he looked like a terribly small welterweight, but when he's in there fighting people, I mean, he ain't getting muscled around. So, yeah, I mean, I guess you're right.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like in that fight with Tumenov, he might have been on Connor's Flintstone vitamin supplement plan there. But aside from that, I have kind of felt that he looked a little smaller. And I do think in this specific spot that Leon might be able to bully him a little bit in those grappling exchanges. But hey, you give up your back to a guy like Gunny, you give up that mount, the fight might be over. But I simply think Leon will find a way to win here.
Well, there's another thing with Edwards that and I can't remember. It might have been the Cerrone fight, actually. That when they tied up, it was more like a tie clinch situation, and the way that Edwards broke that clinch with two like right hooks to the dome, they were just like razor fast, and the way that he breaks the clinches with punches, I really like that about him. Like when you get in close to him, you're still eating shots on the way out. He doesn't give you breaks there. So I think that could be something that could work in his favor here after he defends a takedown. He defends it, and then when they go to break from those clinches, I think that he's going to land some big shots there in the transition periods from grappling and striking.
Hey guys, Dan here. Just want to let you know I am back to my underdog ways, and this weekend I got 2 underdogs at bestfightpicks.com. Let's get it, baby. Main event of the evening. We got Darren the Gorilla Till. He's 17-1-1, and Jorge Gamebred Masvidal is 32-13, and currently they got Darren the Gorilla Till minus 260. The comeback on Jorge Gamebred Masvidal is plus 220. Shaq, I know every time you see that plus money next to Jorge's name, I know it's intriguing. I know it's like, oh man, is he finally gonna not lose a robbery decision this time? So I gotta know, man, here in England, I mean, look, the odds are stacked against it for a reason. You think you can overcome that and get a win?
I'm not singing that tune these days too much. But as far as this fight goes, Till definitely had a disappointing effort against Woodley, the former champ. How many strikes did he land? 0. Okay. And then and then Jorge, his last 2 fights have definitely been a disappointing. The Damian one is not as disappointing, but it was what happened afterwards. That Wonder Boy fight was the first time in a while where he's just looked,
They're trying to slip the Maya fight under the rug.
They're trying to slip, going into that fight, they're trying to slip the Maya fight under the rug. Jorge, if you win this fight, will still give you the title shot. And in my opinion, he went out there and laid an egg. I mean, that was the first time in a while he got dropped. He just had no chance in that fight.
What he told Michael Bisping on Fight Week.
He's a guy that's been known for losing by split decision. That was the first time in a while where he's gotten absolutely dominated from start to finish. So that showed me that Jorge Masvidal, in my opinion, is declining. And then after that, he goes off and does the Telemundo TV show, which, go ahead, get paid, bro. But it just lets me know that Jorge, possibly might be looking to, start a retirement plan, man. There's no shame in that. He's got 45 fights. Cerrone's beaten some of the best of the best. Darren Till, on the other hand, I think he was a case of another hype machine, in truthfulness, man. To lose to Woodley is one thing. The way that played out just let me know the guy had no business being in there. He was not ready for that fight. A lot of people think he got gifted a decision against Wonderboy. The level of his opponents going into that fight with Woodley were nothing close to that level, so I think they had a good point, but just as far as these guys match up, I do think we're going to start seeing a decline from Jorge Masvidal. I feel like Till has a lot of size, or at least he will on fight night, as long as that weight cut's going according to plan, which I think it is. Because going into the Woodley fight, I did think he came in a little bit too light. I mean, he weighed in at 169. He just looked really light that whole week, man. So, I think Till is the better puncher. I feel like Jorge, like we saw, his last fight was the first time he got dropped flush. I think there's a chance that he gets dropped flush here as well. And I think that if Till does that, I think he can just coast a decision here in his hometown of England. We know George's history on the cards. And George does have a pulling the trigger issue, man. Sometimes he just doesn't let it go, and I feel like that's cost him a lot of fights. At least he should let it go more than what he's doing, So I feel like at this stage in his career, that Till's just going to pick him apart for a decision, but I wouldn't be surprised if he actually got a finish here.
Chas, what's interesting about this fight is that, we bring up how Jorge Masvidal lost all those split decisions, but what's interesting to me about that is it's not because he's a shitty fighter or anything like that. It just seems to me like Jorge Masvidal feels like he might be winning every fight, and then he just doesn't have the proper amount of output to actually get the decision on the judges' scorecard. So, Chas Skelly, what's your opinion on Till versus Masvidal?
Yeah, I actually think, in my opinion, man, I like Masvidal. I've always liked Masvidal. I like his style. I like his striking. I think a battle of two strikers here. I think Masvidal is a little tighter with his defense, with his guard. He's a little tighter with his punches on the inside there. Honestly, I like Masvidal. I think that he's going to mix in his wrestling a little bit in this one. Even if he just feints the takedowns and gets Till thinking takedown, I think that he's going to pressure Till a little bit. Till's going to be the bigger guy, so size could play a factor. But I just like Masvidal. I think he's going to outbox him, to be honest. I think he's going to have the crisper, cleaner boxing. I think he's going to land the better shots. I think Till's going to get a little bit frustrated and start trying to land the big shots. And I think that's going to open up some takedowns. I think Masvidal's going to get some takedowns and grind out the rounds. So
he's going with Masvidal. Listen, if you're picking him, he's plus 220. You taking that shot on the underdog here?
Yeah, I'm gonna put a little bit on him, but I've got a lot out on it already. So I actually put him in a parlay, but I'm not.
You put a plus 220 dog in a parlay, huh?
Oh yeah.
Chas Skelly likes to live life dangerously.
That's right. That's how I roll.
So, man, my opinion on this fight, well, first of all, I got to preface it by saying that I have so much respect for both these guys, and on a personal level, too, not just because they're exciting fighters, but because, when I was first starting out, half the battle, Darren Till always gave me an interview, no problem, super cool guy, and then also Jorge Masvidal fought in Atlanta, Georgia at UFC 201, and he was surrounded by a 30-person entourage, and he still had enough time to come up to Shaq and I, shake our hands, and let us know not to bet the under 2.5 in the Ross Pearson fight. Thank you, George, for that tip. So, listen, as far as this matchup and how their styles match up, what's interesting to me is that Darren Till is so much bigger than Jorge Masvidal. This seems like it's an 185er versus a 155er. Now, we can talk about the skills. Jorge is very well-rounded, very skilled, but size, there's weight classes for a reason. I do think size will be a factor here. Let me explain what I mean by that, because what was that fight where we saw recently where the more skilled guy was the smaller guy, but every time the bigger guy would land? Exactly. We saw this fight between Cannonier and Reyes that happened at 205 pounds. And what was interesting about that fight was that it seemed like Cannonier was actually the more skilled fighter, but anytime he would touch Reyes, it wouldn't affect Reyes, but anytime Reyes would touch him, it would fucking wobble him and stun him. And obviously, since that point, Cannonier dropped 20 pounds. Now he's at 185 pounds. He's at his proper weight class. I see a similar thing happening here. I feel like Jorge Masvidal is going to look like, okay, he's got the better technique. He's got, he's just a more well-rounded guy. But every time Till lands, it's going to have an effect because of the size difference. And ultimately, and I know Darren Till had that questionable moment in that Dalby fight, so you might wonder, oh, what happens if this goes late? Well, I don't question that because in that fight against Wonderboy, it was Till who was dropping Wonderboy in the 5th round. So Till's cardio, I don't have a question about it. And Jorge, obviously, he can go the full distance. You've seen it many times against Gil Melendez, against Benson Henderson. What do those fights have in common? He lost close decisions. Man, I don't think Till's going to blow him out the water, and not by any means. Jorge is as skilled as they come. And, man, if Jorge can mix in some MMA takedowns, some nice wrestling there like he did to James Krause, like he did to Michael Chiesa, like he did to fucking Pat Healy back in the day, maybe he can go out here and put on this MMA clinic or capitalize on opportunities, submit Darren Till. But ultimately, I have Darren Till via decision. Well, now we got to hit up Kyle Marley for the Big Marley. And joining us now on the Big Marley Minute is Big Marley himself, Kyle. This is the Spotify era of Half the Battle, and what a better card than Darren Till and Jorge Masvidal to kick it off.
This is a pretty sick card, but it's going to be tough, man. There's a lot of toss-ups, and I think it's hard to find a good DraftKings lineup you like, but there's definitely money to be won, and I'm going to try to win it.
Oh, so Kyle Marley's saying it's a tough card from the DraftKings perspective, huh?
Yeah, I think it is.
So, main event, obviously Darren Till, Jorge Masvidal. Do you see any value in the dog Masvidal? The reason I ask is obviously the odds are stacked against him, not just at the betting window, but his history with decisions, this being in London. Tell me your opinion.
Yeah, I actually do side with the dog, mostly because of prices. He's only $7K while Till is $9.2K. I think this is going to be a close fight. I think it's closer than the odds indicate. And I probably see it going all 5 rounds. If that's the case, I see it going down to like a split decision if it were like anywhere else in the world. But with it being in England, I have to think that the judges are going to give it to Till in a close fight. So I am picking Till to get the win, but $9,200, it's really hard to pay up for that when he's scoring like 65 in 5-round decisions. So I'm really more interested in the $7K from Masvidal because he can go out there and put 50 points up in a loss. And at $7K, I'm okay with that. If I can get 5 other people I feel good about, I think Masvidal is like a cash lock at that price, and I don't see him getting finished, and that's what Till would need to do to pay off his price tag. So I think all the value here is on the dog. Give me him in all formats.
Nathaniel Wood's taking on Jose Quinones, and many feel like this is a hometown showcase fight for Nathaniel Wood. But as you know, Jose Quinones, he's on a 4-fight win streak inside the octagon, trains with Dominick Cruz, very tough guy. Which way you going?
Got to go with Nathaniel Wood here. He's definitely going to have the crowd behind him, so they're going to be going crazy every time he lands something. And I've been super impressed with this kid. So he's definitely one of my favorite plays on the card. Mostly, though, because he's probably my most confident play on the card. On a card with a whole bunch of toss-ups, he's the one I feel best about. So that's why I really like him. But he is $9,400 on DraftKings. He's the highest priced guy. It's going to be hard to get him in lineups, but I am going to try and make it a priority to be overweight on him. So I like Wood a good bit here. I'll probably be fading Quinones. And I think Wood's probably going to finish him at some point. So like 2nd, 3rd round finish by Wood. And I say he will pay off that $9,400 salary.
So speaking of toss-ups, you got Claudio Silva taking on Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts. And in my eyes, it's pretty clear-cut. Either Claudio Silva is going to get on top of Danny and pound him out or choke him out, or Danny's going to keep it standing and knock him out. So you going with the 3rd-degree black belt, or are you going with Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts?
I like this fight a lot from a DraftKings perspective, so I'll definitely be taking shots on both sides. I just feel like this is going to be one of those lineups one of those fights that ends up on the optimal lineup. If Roberts goes out there and gets a KO at 7,600, he's going to be on it. And then I think if Claudio can get the fight to the ground, then he could probably lock up a 1st or 2nd round sub as well, and that'll put him on it at 8,500, or 8,600. So it's just a fight I'm going to be targeting in a lot of my lineups, but I do like the dog here. I think Roberts will be able to keep this fight standing, and I think his edge on the feet is just so big where I don't see Silva being able to last 3 rounds if he's stuck standing. So he's going to have to get the fight to the ground to win. But if he does, he's going to pull off the submission probably. So that's why you got to target both sides. If I was making one lineup, though, I'll take Roberts. He's my pick by knockout.
So another fight that's kind of a toss-up at the betting window, but interestingly enough, this isn't striker versus grappler. This is a lot of Welsh pride on the line because John Phillips is taking on Jack Marshman. These two don't like each other, and they both have very similar styles. They like to stand and trade. They both love the knockout. So who do you think is going to get that knockout?
Yeah, another fight that I love both sides of. This is one of my top 3 favorite fights on the card for DraftKings because I do think one of them is going to get knocked out. And again, I'll lean with the dog. I think the line is a little bit too wide, and on DraftKings we got Phillips $1,400 cheaper. So with this being just a slug 'em out brawl, I think Phillips' chin's going to hold up a little bit more, and I like him at that cheaper price. I do think, though, whoever wins the fight is probably going to be on the optimal lineup with the knockdown or multiple knockdowns and the knockout. Even though this fight isn't going to be getting any takedowns, which is what I usually like to target, this is still one of my favorite fights. So I'll be taking shots on both sides, but a lot more on Phillips. He's my one unit free bet of the week at plus 150. So I do like him to get the win, and I like the price.
So Arnold Allen versus Jordan Rinaldi is so intriguing from a DraftKings perspective because I feel like Arnold Allen has the more finishing potential, but Jordan Rinaldi can add up points with the takedowns. So I got to know, man, is this that spot where you're going to be 50-50 on the lineups, or what are you thinking?
No, I would rather fade this fight than go 50-50. I am picking Allen to win. I think he just has more ways to win, and my issue is that he's never even scored 80 points in a win. He's got 4 wins on his record, and his highest is 79 points. So at $8,700, it's not going to do you a whole lot of good. And since I'm not picking Rinaldi, I just don't have as much interest in him when there are a lot of dogs on this card that I do like. So I think really this is a fight to fade, and the only reason to target it would be if you're wanting low ownership on either guy.
So Saparbeg Safarov is taking on the newcomer Nicolai. You going with Nicolai or are you going with Safarov?
So yeah, this is my other favorite fight on the card. Those are my top 3 favorite fights are Silva, Roberts, Marshman, Phillips, and then this fight. And I was actually originally leaning with Safarov just because he's got the UFC experience. I just think this is going to be another brawl where one guy's going to drop for sure. I'm really not impressed with either one of them. But I've changed my pick. I think today I changed my pick over to the debut fighter. I can't even pronounce his name, but I think he's going to end up knocking Safarov out of the UFC. And at 9K, I mean, I just think he's going to end up paying that off because it's going to most likely be a finish. We don't have any props on this card yet, but I think fight doesn't go to decision is going to be pretty highly lined on this fight. And I do like targeting both sides of it, but I'll take the favorite.
So, an intriguing fight in the middleweight division. You got Ian Heinisch taking on Tom Breese. Obviously, Tom Breese moving up from welterweight. You saw his middleweight debut, a first-round KO over Kelly. And Ian Heinisch, you saw his UFC debut going out there and beating the top 20 Cesar Mutanchi. So, what's your opinion on this middleweight clash?
It is a close one. I really like it more from a watching angle than I do from DraftKings. I don't trust either guy enough to be heavily invested in either of them, but I think Breeze has the edge on the feet, and I think he'll be able to keep it there. So I am going to pick Breeze. I just think he probably wins by a decision. Maybe he gets around that 10x of that $8,400 price tag. I just don't see him having like 100-plus upside where there are a lot of people on this card who could get that, and even underdogs who could get that. Heinisch could get it done as well. I think he'd have a better shot if he can get to the fight to the ground, maybe do some ground and pound, get a finish that way. But I don't know. I'm probably going to have less of this fight than the field altogether, but my pick is Breeze by 29-28 decision.
And last but not least, Narimani is taking on Mike Grundy. You know Mike Grundy's been a popular underdog. He dropped all the way from plus 250 to plus 135. I know he's going to be popular on DraftKings. Is this a good spot to take Narimani, or do you recommend fading the fight altogether?
I kind of do like this fight, actually, for both sides. I mean, you got to like Grundy just because he's a wrestler. He's going to be going out there looking for takedowns. And if he gets them and gets the win, I mean, $7,300, he's got a good shot of being on the optimal lineup. So you definitely can't fade Grundy. But I am picking Narimani here to get the win. I think he's going to be much better on the feet. I think he can get a knockout. And with this odds value all on Grundy, it's going to keep Narimani at a lower ownership. And that's what I really do like about him most is the lower ownership. If I can get him at 15% and he goes out there and gets a first-round knockout, I got a good chance of winning that 25K. So I'm going to have more Narimani here, and I'm going to go the opposite of the line movement. But I can't fade Grundy because he is going to be the one looking to get the takedowns.
And that's why you are the DraftKings guy for Half the Battle. Well, Kyle, it's going down this Saturday. They can follow you at Big Marley 3, and your bets are available, and your DraftKings write-ups are available at bestfightpicks.com. And I heard that you have a max bet this weekend.
That's right, man. What do we say? It's max bet season, right?
That's right.
I do feel good about this one, and I got some underdogs going as well. So hop on those plays. I feel good about this week. We're going to win big, and then we're going to keep rolling next week.
Yes, sir. You can catch those at bestfightpicks.com. Kyle Marley, best of luck. We'll speak soon.
All right, good luck. Let's get it.
And that's why Kyle Marley is the DraftKings guy for Half the Battle. Well, Shaq, now we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So what is the fight to watch for UFC London?
My fight to watch is going to be Claudio the Hannibal Silva against Hot Chocolate Roberts. I mean, Hot Chocolate Roberts, how many fight of the nights does he have? A bunch, right? So, I mean, anytime that guy fights, you got to watch, and either someone's going to get brutally submitted or brutally knocked out.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Chas Skelly, it's a great card. What is your fight to watch for UFC London?
I think my fight to watch is going to be the main event. I really like the matchup. I like the Till versus Masvidal matchup. I think it's going to be a very technical striking matchup with some possibly some takedowns thrown in there, and it could end up being a slobber knocker. So I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the last time I missed a Jorge Masvidal or Darren Till fight, so I have to agree with you. For me, my fight to watch is going to be Joseph Duffy versus Marc Diakiese. Both of these guys' backs are up against the wall. Obviously, Joe Duffy hasn't fought since that knockout loss to Vic back in 2017, with Diakiese coming off 3 very devastating losses in a row. The winner, I mean, both these guys desperately need to get back on track, and for that reason, that is my fight to watch. Not to mention, it's going to be very exciting while it lasts as well. Well, Shaq, who is your fighter to watch for UFC London?
My fighter to watch is someone you just mentioned, Marc Diakiese. His job's on the line this weekend. This guy, at one point, was one of the top prospects. They were saying he was going to fight your boy Vic. They were saying he was on his way to the top 15, and now he's on the verge of possibly getting cut. I think it's a winnable fight for him. And if he wins this fight, his confidence might just shoot through the roof. He might, go back on that trajectory. But
he might dye his mohawk another color.
Exactly. But Marc Diakiese's my fighter to watch.
Chaz, who is your fighter to watch for UFC London?
My fighter to watch is going to be Mike Grundy. I think this is something for me. It's a good test for him. Nad is a very well-rounded fighter. He's a good fighter. And we'll see what exactly Grundy brings to the table. Is his high-level wrestling, is it good enough to stick with the top-level guys? Is his ground game, is he good enough on top to get those finishes? Or is this just going to be a bust of just a one-trick pony?
And my fighter to watch is Ian Heinisch. This is a guy who has overcome a lot of adversity in his personal life. Obviously, he got locked away in Rutgers Island, completely turned his life around. Now, on 6 days short notice, gets a win over a top 20 guy in Cesar Mutanchi. Now here against Tom Breese, he's got a chance to not only go on a 2-fight win streak, but show that he might be one of the top prospects and now even contenders in the UFC middleweight division. So for that reason, Ian Heinisch is my fighter to watch. Well, gentlemen, we did it. It's going down this Saturday afternoon on ESPN+, UFC London, Till versus Masvidal. They can follow Shaq at MMA Genius 05. They can follow Chaz the Scrapper Skelly at Chas Skelly. They can follow me at Best Fight Picks. Our bets, our plays are available at bestfightpicks.com. Subscribe to Half the Battle on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Stitcher. And now, for the very first time, on Spotify. This is so exciting. Thank you guys so much. And go to bestfightpicks.com because right now, this year, it's been underdog season. You know about that Cerrone plus 170, that Cejudo plus 190. Last week on that Zaleski plus 105, that Diego Sanchez plus 225. I'm back to my underdog ways, so hit me up at bestfightpicks.com. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.